Mr. Hancock is no longer a Minister of the Crown, and he has no intention to be anymore. Everything that he does and what he wants going from this point forward is about creating this media image of him, and he is more than happy to be sort of pictured as a sort of almost a villain. I think he's more than happy with that. So we do need to remember that, as important as it is to hold ministers from the period to account, he is somebody who, if it is decided that we're going to go after him as sort of the fall guy for all of this, it's not necessarily going to lead to sort of lessons being learned. He makes it for a very easy figure to push under the bus, given that he has voluntarily laid down in a bus lane already by giving up any sort of political aspirations. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if there was a lot of cross-party collaboration with the COVID inquiry ongoing to try to come up with some sort of narrative that doesn't necessarily damage the futures of MPs who are still aspiring to high office, whereas you can pin all the blame on somebody like Mr. Hancock, as much as he may very well be culpable, yes, or because like Boris Johnson.
And as Sir Keir Starmer indicated at PMQs, the answers that the families need from this, with the COVID inquiry still hearing the evidence. And we heard, of course, in Liz Kendall's question, 17,678 residents of those care homes died between the time when Sir Chris Whitty said the testing should take place and when it actually went into action on a mandatory basis.
Yeah, I think, again, I hold no candle for the government. I'm not interested in sort of whitewashing anything that they may have got right or wrong, but I do think that we need to recognise that this sort of thing was probably always going to happen when you have the competing interests of people's safety and also the nature of Westminster politics, is that you're always going to get people weighing up column A and column B and having to come to a decision where inevitably some people were going to lose out, especially seeing as actually the COVID pandemic was an unprecedented set of circumstances in modern times for a government like this. It is, of course, vitally important that we get the truth. And I think that what is useful about these revelations is it continues to shine a light rather than lead us all to memory hole what happened. I think a lot of people would quite like to forget the actions of the government and the way that things were prosecuted back then. That, I think, that there is some benefit there. But again, I do think we need to remember this government was flying very much on the hoof. It ignored a lot of its own advice. It ignored a lot of expert advice as and when it fitted its own narrative.
Yes. Do you believe, however, given obviously what Sir Keir Starmer said in this past hour, 85 million spent on the inquiry, and putting it to the Prime Minister, can we have a report by the end of this year? I mean, the difficulty, of course, it is an independent inquiry. The government can't push that, but clearly it may well now be a realisation that they've got to get answers for everyone and find out what actually went on behind the scenes.
I suspect that Sir Keir Starmer is very keen for any inquiry to land very firmly during the premiership of Rishi Sunak, because he doesn't want it dragging on into his own premiership. And, as things stand, the Labour Party is likely to win the next general election, and that would probably come some point in the next 2 years. We know that. Yeah. He doesn't want, I think, necessarily to have to deal with that grenade, because what it will probably show is that not enough scrutiny was played by the opposition, by the Labour Party. It's very easy to blame the government when you are faced with a catastrophe that you have not planned for and you are not qualified to do. But if the opposition, whose job it is to provide scrutiny, just wave everything through, well, then I think fingers will be pointed there as well. So I suspect actually Sir Keir Starmer, some of it will be motivated by wanting the best for the families, for the victims, for the system. But also, I don't think it's something that he wants to have to inherit.